Laird, who's editor of Plastics News Europe and a regular attendee at the European Bioplastics Conference. Karen, this year has been a lot of focus. Blue Planet has generated a lot of public and mainstream media attention on plastics packaging and waste. Has bioplastics sector missed an opportunity to gain traction on the back of all of that?
Well, I see why you'd think that. But I don't think that's exactly the case, because bioplastics are not known to be able to disintegrate in the sea, in an ocean environment. So they are not biodegradable in water. So the big flap this year has mostly been marine plastics. And that's exactly an area where they do not shine. So I don't think they've missed an opportunity in that sense. And what they have done is they've been working more or less steadily on getting bioplastics to be an accepted alternative to regular plastics in the big plastics ban that's coming up for single-use plastics. So when you say miss a golden opportunity, no, I don't think so.
All right, well, just to elaborate on it a bit, what we're noticing is that there is a growing recognition that actually plastics isn't the demon that some of the media have painted it as, and that it does have an important role to play in modern consumer lifestyle and retail trade. The fact that it's made of oil, whereas bio-based is made of natural resources, just sounds more palatable, for want of a better word. And that's where I think the traction could have been gained, because bioplastics, for all the interest that's shown in it and the discussion about it, still remains less than 1% of all plastics packaging, and has done for years. If it's ever to gain traction, surely this was the time to actually at least put it up on the agenda.
Well, it's been put up on the agenda.
Then why is it not being taken up in any volume?
I think that their time has come. If you look at France, for example, they passed the law that said you are no longer allowed to use disposable cutlery, disposable anything that's made that's not home compostable, and that has galvanized them, the industry, to find alternatives to regular plastic that will solve the problem, that are home compostable. So it's a topic that's so complicated to explain, because so many people have a different impression of what a bioplastic is. I mean, you just said a bioplastic or a bio-based plastic is one that is made of a renewable source, a biomass. But a bioplastic, as such, can also just be a plastic that biodegrades, and they are also some are made of fossil fuels.
That duality is a problem in the consumer mindset.
Yes.
And nothing has ever really been done to resolve that. So most people outside of this room, let's say, presented with a bioplastic solution, will assume it's the wrongly termed biodegradable, compostable.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's where we should start, is always talk about bio-based, I should think, if we're talking about plant-based or biomass-based in the first place. And if it's biodegradable, say biodegradable, don't say bioplastic. Say biodegradable plastic.
Just to switch slightly, given the suitability of fossil fuel-based plastics, the majority of plastics, in terms of recycling and also as a contributor to the circular economy, do you think it's correct to dismiss it as being unsustainable, as one of the speakers did today?
Very true. And in a completely ideal world, she's completely right, because fossil fuels, strictly speaking, are not renewable. Once you use them up, they're gone. And this is not the definition of sustainability. Sustainability is that you have something, that you don't harm the next generation.
That's the definition.
Well, this was the definition that was given in the United Nations, ever.
Okay.
And so if you talk about fossil fuel plastics not being sustainable, it's true. They're not renewable. On the other hand, they are completely recyclable, many of them. And if we can find a good way to recycle them, to reuse them, and to have the most effective use made of this very valuable resource, I don't think you can then just rule out and say it's not sustainable.
Because I would have thought that the whole premise of the circular economy was a kind of an exercise in sustainability in its own right.
Well, it is. That's why they have it.
Therefore, by definition, anything that contributes into it must be sustainable.
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
But then we're back to it's not renewable. So what are we going to do when it's gone?
Well, the oil isn't renewable, but the byproduct is renewable because it's recyclable. So it's definitions, isn't it?
It's all definitions. It always is.
Just to look at compostables, I mean, what we were seeing today, and you made the point correctly earlier that compostable plastic is not going to solve marine pollution. But if it takes so long to degrade, actually, what's the point of it? Wouldn't it be more useful to send it to, say, energy for waste in the short term?
What do you mean by so long?
Well, at least in the sea, in the North Atlantic 5 years, I think we saw, and in tropical waters 3 years to degrade. That's a long time. I mean, it can do a lot of damage in the marine environment.
Well, it's going to do a lot of damage in the marine environment. It should never get into the marine environment.
I think my point is, though, that wherever it is, whether it's in the marine environment or in the hedgerow, it takes a certain amount of time to compost. It doesn't just compost.
Well, some of them do. The
Do
home
they?
compostable ones do.
Well, 6 months.
How long does a grapefruit take?
Well, it's a long time for it to be hanging around. I mean, couldn't it be... It's not going to go into the circular economy. So if it was going to provide a practical, immediate use, what about energy for waste?
Well, how much caloric value do you think it has?
I have no idea.
I mean, a lot less than oil. So I'm not sure that putting a lot of energy into collecting it for waste would be any better, or collecting it for incineration would be any better than collecting it for industrial composting.
Well, how much calorific gain is there by waiting 6 months for it to disappear completely?
Oh, none. I agree. But I'm not sure. The problem with some of these incineration installations is that you put in a lot of waste and then they have to add in a lot of other stuff that can be easily recycled, like glass or stuff, to get the temperature high enough for it to burn.
Okay. Lastly, biopolymers. First generation, second generation.
Oh goodness, yes.
All right. I mean, arguments for both.
Yes.
What broadly are the pros and cons? Is one actually better than the other, or is it horses for courses?
I'd prefer to say first generation and third generation.
Third generation.
Yeah, I'd skip the second generation.
And the third generation would be?
Producing biopolymers that are based on CO2 or methane.
Right.
Because what we're trying to do is get a hold of the carbon. And the reason we use first generation feedstocks is because the carbon is easy. It's there. It's in the sugar. In the second generation feedstocks, there's this huge amount of energy and effort and technology that goes into getting it ready, being able to use it. Lignin, for example, is not an easy product to break down into its constituent bits. So I've heard various people say they would also prefer to go from first generation to third generation or stick with first generation. Now, as you know, first generation gets you into extremely emotional arguments with land use. So that's a problem. Even if you can prove that that's not the case, you'll still be attacked on that. And it's a very potent argument as well. I mean, they will point to starving children in Yemen and look at a bioplastic that was grown in a cornfield. I mean, who could argue, right? So that's the problem. But I personally am very interested in the work being done by various companies to go straight, to skip the plant altogether, just to go straight to the carbon in the air.
I think it's fascinating. I mean, that is viable, is it? Third generation methane, carbon, CO2 being translated into polymer.
It is, yes, it is. It's just, again, it's technological development, and it's going to take time to get it right, and it's still very expensive. But hey, everything is at the beginning.